At an observatory atop Mauna Loa, 11,000 feet up on Big Island, we measure the atmospheric concentration of CO2. I was born just months after that measure hit 350 parts per million. For folks in this audience, you know the significance of that mark. But you also know that for decades, we failed to take decisive action. And we see the results. Today, you don't have to climb to the top of a volcano in Hawaii to know that we're in trouble. Code Red for Humanity is not just a line in an IPCC report, it is a reality that is felt in our communities. We see it in the surging seas. We see it in the floods on our coastlines, in the lives lost, and the supply chains disrupted. President Biden sees this code red for what it is, not as a stop sign, but as a spur to get moving. And that's what we've done. In the midst of this crisis, the reason we've been able to move forward is by all of us, and the president first among, by seizing on this fact that climate action is not a story defined by doom and despair. It is a story defined by hope and possibilities. Here's the deal. The progress that we've made has not been the president's progress alone. It's not been possible just because of his leadership. The lesson from the last few years is the lesson of an unexpected and broad coalition, the confluence of purposeful effort that brought about this moment. That coalition provided the oxygen for the leadership and the progress we're seeing today. A lot of folks here this week are going to talk about the technology curves and how much progress we've made on techno-economics. They'll talk about the cascade of events that led us here, but those are not inevitable drivers of this moment. Nothing about the transformational nature of this moment for our economy or our people was or is inevitable, was or is a mere product of accident. We are here because a new coalition formed between labor and industry, young people and old, organizers in rural areas and urban, folks focused on public health and on jobs and on justice. All of them came together to unlock the potential of this moment. And this coalition, with President Biden, and you'll hear from Vice President Harris tomorrow, hopefully, has advanced a new approach to climate action. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. It's a new approach to climate action that says, yes, we will cut the emissions. Yes, we will deploy clean energy, but we will chase after something else. Places once idled will now be turned back on. People once left out will now be pulled into the fight. And projects that once seemed pie in the sky will now become steel in the ground. Under President Biden's leadership, we've harnessed this new approach to climate action at monumental scale and in a very particular way by pulling all of the levers of government. I think about the cabinet room table. Every single member of that group knows they're on the hook to advance urgent and bold action on climate change. From day one of the administration, the president has paired the power of catalytic investment and strong and smart standards for maximum impact. 400 executive actions over the course of the first 2 years. That includes new standards for cars and trucks. It includes a historic trade deal with the EU that will tackle emissions from steel and aluminum. It includes game-changing steps, including the bipartisan ratification of a treaty to tackle superpollutants like hydrofluorocarbons and methane. And then, of course, it includes the biggest investments in climate ever, anywhere in the world. The Inflation Reduction Act alone is poised to cut 10 times more emissions than any piece of legislation ever enacted by the United States Congress. And we're seeing the results. That has turned America into a magnet, an absolute magnet for private investment. 139 clean energy investments, 49 battery manufacturing investments, hundreds of billions of dollars of private capital that have made the decision to come off the sidelines. The work's not done, but this is proof that our approach is working. But look, just growing the economy, that's not going to be enough. And under President Biden's leadership, growing just a cleaner economy is not enough either. He has made clear to all of us on his team the unwavering prioritization of workers and communities, and that means progress in every single zip code in this country. I think of places like Moses Lake, where a mill had been shuttered. Now it's got a 10-year contract to produce wafers and ingots that will turn into solar panels. In Georgia, I think about Toledo, Ohio, where there was once a brownfield. Now there is a steel plant producing steel 50% cleaner with USW District 1 workers, not only putting steel in the ground, but steel in the spine of the American middle class. A port that had opened up in the 1600s, just a trading route, fur trade, back in the 1600s, now rehabilitated, revitalized to be part of the offshore wind economy. Expanding the zip code of opportunity means also expanding our sense of what it will take to take on the climate crisis. Looking at the agriculture sector, President was the first president, I double-checked, to talk about cover crops before a joint session of Congress. But it's not just talk. Now we've got 60,000 farms signed up, 25 million acres across the country, propelling climate-smart agriculture. And by the way, the next generation of farmers and ranchers are going to look like all of us showing up to the field, the full diversity of America, and that's why the partnership with minority-serving institutions is a critical part. Now, just making sure that the future is equitable doesn't take care of the full opportunity we have in front of us. We have the opportunity to tackle environmental injustice, deliver justice long overdue. And sure, that means standing up the world's largest and the nation's first climate bank, $27 billion, but it also means going after the issues our government created in the first place. For decades, we used transportation policy to cut communities in half, building highways through the middle of neighborhoods. Now we have billions of dollars to reconnect those communities. For decades, we had a racist housing policy, redlining, and the effect of that is felt because there are communities where there are fewer trees and there is more pavement and it is literally hotter to live there. We're getting after that challenge by planting trees in those communities. You know, when we talk about environmental justice and climate justice, sometimes it can sound like an esoteric concept. But let me tell you what it feels like on the ground. It feels like the kid who's waiting for the good news or the care package from his grandparents, who now doesn't see a trail of pollution carry that into the community. The Postal Service is going electric. That iconic yellow school bus is going to be green. And for the kid, what that means is that they're going to get onto the bus and it's going to start moving, and they're no longer going to hear that roar of the diesel engine. They're not going to breathe that gunk into their lungs. They will know that in this country, we prioritize our kids and their future, and we're going to make that investment. Now, let me talk about what this means for our economy. This means a clean energy economy, but it also means a fair economy built from the bottom up and the middle out. No, for a long time, we used to talk about green jobs, and I remember walking into rooms, people would say, man, I don't want a green job. Sound like a job on another planet. I want a good paying job. And what this administration has done is made sure that as we build this new clean energy economy, it is an economy that lifts up the middle class, and that means partnership with our unions who are empowering our workers to forge the solutions that we need. 3 examples of that real quick. First, offshore wind. We've got the building trades who are in a project labor agreement on the East Coast forging the offshore wind industry, and it's not just prosperity for our coastlines. 46 states are part of the offshore wind transformation. Dominion, building offshore wind in Virginia, is building a ship in Brownsville, Texas, with union workers that's sourcing steel from Alabama and West Virginia, all paying a living wage. We see it in solar. 1/3 of the solar panels that are deployed in the United States today, deployed during the Biden administration. And we're not just going to deploy it. We are going to manufacture it here in the United States. 8 times more manufacturing capacity for solar will be online by the end of his first term than the day he walked into office. And nowhere do we see this playbook more effectively being prosecuted than in the electric vehicle transformation. We've doubled the number of electric vehicle models being offered. We've doubled the number of charging stations that are lining our highways. We've doubled deployment, and we're on track to double it again. And by the way, that's going to be made in America, not just the cars, but the batteries as well. You know, one of the things folks ask me is, how do you measure whether you're on track to make progress to your 2030 goals? This is how we measure it. We are going to have the factories in place pumping out the products that we need that give us the confidence we will meet the mark. 13 million vehicles worth of batteries are going to come online just with the investment that's been announced. And our ambition, when we talk about winning the whole supply chain, our ambition doesn't stop with the vehicles, it doesn't stop with the batteries. We're now extracting lithium from the Salton Sea, returning economic opportunity to a place that had been left out of clean energy or any economic future, revitalizing that community. And by the way, the clean energy economy needs to be a circular economy, and we're investing in recycling and reuse as we do this work. So I think you know this, but let me say it once again. When the president took office, he set a bold target that he would cut U.S. emissions in half by 2030. I've talked a lot about how our playbook has, I think, kicked ass and delivered real results. But there's a gap. We're at about 40%. We need to get to 50%. And then we're going to keep going. We fill that gap not just because of the environmental imperative, not just because of the imperative to act on climate, but because, folks, It's going to unlock a whole lot of prosperity for this country and everyone who lives here. And the way we're going to do that is by continuing to pair investments with standards. So you'll see more regulatory action out of the Biden administration in the months to come. It's by making sure that we don't think the federal government's going to solve all the problems. We got to have states and cities and tribes stepping up, and we will be their partner in the Biden administration. And it means pulling even more of that private investment off the sidelines and into the fight. But what it really means is remembering what helped us ebb the tide of inaction that's flowed for so long. 350 parts per million, 375, 400, and more and more. And now we have got the solution in our hands. This is what it is. It's climate action delivered with people, places, real projects at the center. That's how we're going to make the difference. That's the playbook that has brought us here with the progress that we've made under the Biden-Harris administration. And for the rest of the way, as we work to finish the job, that's how we're going to make our progress going forward. People, once left out, are going to be pulled into the fight. Places once written off are going to be turned into hubs of economic activity. Projects once seen as pie in the sky will be steel in the ground. That's how we meet the moment in this decisive decade.